Hello, everybody. My name is Lita Abella, and welcome to my show, What's Your Story in the New Normal? I'm an entrepreneur, health and wellness consultant, public speaker, licensed private investigator, and former LAPD lieutenant. And in between all that, I went to law school and obtained my JD. I tell stories that inform, inspire, and influence others. I have a very special guest today. His name is Jeffrey Cornejo Jr. And we actually met because we both have a tie with the city of Azusa. Jeffrey Cornejo is actually our city clerk. I'm a library commissioner with the city of Azusa, and that's how we met. However, today we're both here as just residents of the city of Azusa, having a just general conversation among two people. So welcome, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you so very much for having me, Miss Abella. I look so forward to doing this. It's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. I love your hat. You look so dapper.
Thank you very much. It's kind of become my signature.
Yes, I know. When I see you at functions, I always know you by your hat.
That's everybody
that's
says,
your
oh, I knew
style.
you were there. I seen the hat. So I said, oh, there you go.
So let the viewers and listeners get to know a little bit about yourself. So can you tell me a little bit about your background? Like, are you married? Do you have kids? Where are you from? Where do you live?
Well, born and raised here in the city of Azusa. I've lived here my entire life. Single, no children. Um, I'm a product of the Azusa Unified School District. I went from kindergarten well, actually Head Start, preschool, kindergarten, all the way through high school.
Wow.
And yeah, I a true product of the school system. One of my first jobs was with the Chamber of Commerce, and I was very blessed to work there. And I was just always very fortunate to be involved in a lot of the events that they had. And it was always really neat because the fact that you've seen all corners of town come together to help promote the city and make it grow and keep it going forward. I've been a member of our historical society here in town for 28 years now. I was a member when I was in junior high school. I got on the board, and now am the president of the organization.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a really beautiful adventure. And I was a commissioner for the city of Azusa. I was on the Cultural Historic Preservation Commission for 17 years prior to becoming the city clerk. And so, and then, excuse me, and right between that, I was at Monrovia Nursery company here in town. And that was another decade of my life that I just look back on very, very affectionately, because it was just a beautiful experience working for that company. I had a lot of wonderful friends that I made, and it just was a really nice time to work for that company. Sadly, before it left the growing grounds here, no longer in the city, but they still are headquartered, which is really cool. But I've been in my position as city clerk since 2013. I am very, very proud to represent the city in that form, and just look forward to all the interesting new changes that are going on. Right now, it's a very exciting time to live in Azusa. It's just, there's never been this much change happen in such little time. And this town is always kind of been looked at as a sleepy town, and that's been for a good reason. We've never been in the fast lane. We've never been the, let's try it out first. It's always been, you know what, let's relax, let the world go and enjoy life, and whatever comes our way, and let's see how it goes. And so it's neat to see that in almost the 4 decades of life that I've been here, to see so much change and so much action happen. And hopefully we're on a good thing for a good future.
Wow, that's a lot to digest. You've done so much. And we're going to talk about all that. And one of the main things that I wanted to talk to you about is when I found out that you're a published author and that you wrote a book. So one, what is the title of your book? And two, do you happen to have a copy of your book with you that we can show the viewers?
As a matter of fact, so it's part of the Images of America series, which was published by Arcadia Publishing. And it's just simply Azusa, as you can see right there. And it was published in 2007. And it was actually a very interesting story. What had happened was we had just finished with the measure to approve the development of the Rosedale property, and I was over at Monrovia Nursery at that time. And I got a letter from Arcadia Publishing saying, we are interested in doing the history of the city of Azusa, and we were wondering if you would be the person to go to as actually being the author for this book. At the time, I'm not gonna lie, it was completely intimidating. I thought, publish a book, my gosh, and I wasn't even on yearbook staff in school or anything like that. I wouldn't even know where to begin. So I kindly declined, and I said, as wonderful as this sounds, it's a major, major project. I'd be more than happy to assist. I'd be more than happy to just give you whatever you need, but I don't think I could take this on, especially right now. And so they said, okay, thank you very much, but don't forget about us. All right, fine. So another year went by, and I got another letter saying, okay, well, how are you now? And by this time, we were now knee deep in the projects that we were working on. And I said, well, as much as I would really like to do it, I can't now. And I said, well, let's see what's going on. We'll wait a while. We'll see. Finally, I think about almost 4 years went by, and I get a letter, and it said, okay, Mr. Cornejo, we covered all grounds. We've asked all who we've asked, and all fingers point to you. So the ball's in your court. When you're ready, we'll go ahead and go forward to getting this book published. So I thought about it, and I was very blessed because I had a really wonderful team at Monrovia Nursery, and I asked Mr. Miles Rosedale at the time if it would be possible to have them help me assist it in whatever I needed to do as far as cropping pictures, scanning, whatever it was. And he said, of course. And so the HR director at the time, they're a wonderful individual and a very dear friend of mine, helped. And so I wrote back to Arcadia Publishing and said, okay, let me know exactly what I need to do, what the timelines are. And so it was kind of funny because, to be very honest, it was, we'll work with you, don't worry, no pressure, but sign these contracts and send them back and we'll go from there. Okay. So I signed the contract, send them. All of a sudden, I get this timeline. All right, boom, 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 boom. Oh, wow, what happened to no pressure? So it was very interesting. So I basically just went cold turkey and said, okay, let's figure out how to do this. And they did help a lot. They did help guide some of the ways, but the timelines were very, very short sometimes. And you got fines too, which I thought was kind of funny if you didn't meet them.
Really?
But
Oh my
yeah,
God.
that was very interesting. But no, it was really interesting. And I was happy that I took it on. And it took about a good year to gather everything. And basically the basis of it is the Azusa Historical Society for many years, along with the library, had a timeline that they would just add. And it just started from the earliest date of the mention of the city of Azusa up to present. And it was basically the larger events and then some little tidbits here and there. So I just kind of used that as my guideline and tried to find as much as possible. I reached out to anybody I possibly could that I knew was long-term residents or old families, and any photographs or anything that you think that would be of any interest that could be included. And that's how I went. And I was very, very fortunate to have access to a lot of that. And my family alone, when you stay somewhere for so long, you kind of accumulate a lot. And I hate using the word pack racks. It sounds so, doesn't really have a nice way of looking at things, but they were very organized, not even hoarders, that's not even a nicer word, but they just kept a lot of stuff, in which I was very grateful because of the fact that I now understand how the importance of things. And so yeah, that's basically how it just started. And the funny thing is that the publisher at the time had never really said you have to cover these periods. It was, what do you find of interest? And I remember thinking 100 years in such a little volume is a lot of history, and you really don't do justice to covering all those periods. So I thought, well, let's just stop in the 1950s. At least that'll give us a good portion of text and photographs so that we just don't cram too much in there. And it was very interesting. It was very, very interesting doing a lot of this. And like I say, I was very fortunate to get a lot of private collections open to me. And as well as APU helped, there was just a lot of entities that were part of the Chamber of Commerce. But that's basically how it all came to be as far as the timeline. And so I had told them that I was going to stop in the 50s because a lot of the stuff that was newer actually isn't available. And it's kind of like that old saying, I don't know if you've heard it before, but not old enough to be ancient, too, wait, was it? Not old enough to be ancient, but too new to be interesting, or something like that. And I just thought, yeah, you know, because somebody like, oh, the 70s, the 80s, I lived through that. That's not historical. But it's funny now that I look at it and think, God, the 80s are now almost 40 years ago. So it does creep up on you. And those things in the eyes of the people that hold it aren't historic yet. So they haven't really been put into collections or donated or anything like that. So I've just been personally collecting things little by little and setting the word out there. If you know of any of these photographs, because sadly we take for granted that everybody, you know, everything's being documented. Nowadays it is. I mean, you look at your phone and see how many photographs you take in just one day, and you think, God, years ago when you had a camera, you know, came with 24 frames, and don't waste them. That use them for good things, and that's it. So now I think everything's being documented, which is wonderful. But there was a period of time where if you didn't own a camera and someone around you didn't, it just was the word of mouth and your imagination that what happened there. So these books, which is really cool about it, is they're picture books. And so to me, I'm a very big person on details. So I like the who, what, when, where, and why. So that was one of the headbutting that me and the publishers would have, because of the fact that I wanted to say on October 21st at 2 o'clock, I met with Miss Lita Abella in regards to this, that, and I'd say, well, why can't we just say in the fall of 2020 you met with Lita? And, well, because all those little details mean something to someone at one time. So we would kind of meet in the middle on that. But it was interesting because I guess after it meets a certain word count, it's considered a different type of book. And so, of course, I had way too much for them. So that was another thing. They would cut back a little things and say, you know, no, too much information on this. Let's touch a little bit more on that. So it was a really interesting experience. And I'm happy that it did happen, because it did get a lot of history documented and celebrated that a lot of people didn't even know happened or exist, and sadly was lost in time.
Wow, that is a lot. And what's so interesting is how you were chosen for this project and where you were working at the time. And I didn't obviously know any of this, but what's so unique is, I don't know if you know that I actually live in Rosedale, and I don't really know the history of how Rosedale got developed. When you mentioned the Monrovia Nursery, because I walk a lot around our development, and so I walk by the Monrovia Nursery all the time, and I've heard from certain people who've been in the city for a long time that it used to be like this really big nursery that had like acres and acres and acres. And I guess part of it was used to develop the Rosedale community. So this is really interesting.
You live in a very, very historic part of town, and what's very interesting is throughout all the town, it's all historic, but it's just at different periods what happened there, and to you know, to where it made an impact or changed our town. And what's interesting about the Rosedale development, which was previously the Monrovia Nursery property, and previously before that, it was the Azusa Foothill Citrus Company Ranch. And previously before that, it was the Azusa Rancho de Dalton, which was Henry Dalton. So it's always had a major role. And we owe a lot to the Slauson family, because if it wasn't for them, we actually probably wouldn't have the development that we do have, because the fact that they sold to the Rosedales. And then if it wasn't for the Rosedales, who kept us in this setting of, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just one of the most, like a walk in the clouds. That's the only way I could describe it. You'd go out any part of that nursery and you could have been anywhere in the fields of some beautiful urban area that you would just never know that you were in the middle of Azusa in Los Angeles County, because there was over 700, I think it was 90 acres of growing grounds. And
Wow.
it just was beautiful, gorgeous. I mean, you could smell the gardenias on the warm days. You could see all the bougainvillea, and then the gorgeous palm trees, the entryway. I mean, it was just a beautiful setting. And it's very interesting because the Azusa Foothill Citrus Company had originally proposed to do a major development on that property in the 20s. And what ended up happening was the crash of 29 that halted it. And so they just stuck it out. And then World War II happened. Well, excuse me, the Depression, then World War II. And then after things started to pick up, it just happened to be that a gentleman that was visiting our Rotary Club here in town heard of a property that was for sale in Azusa that had water rights. And if you're a nurseryman, that's gold to you. And he decided to go take a look at it, and ironically fell in love with it, said, all right, I'm buying it, moved Monrovia Nursery from Monrovia to Azusa, and here we are 70 years later, and their headquarters are still here. But what happened was, of course, the growing grounds outlived their use. You know, they were in the middle of orchards at one time, and then we started getting more and more homes built around us, and it wasn't so much the setting that it originally was set for. And that's when it went to the people to see if it was about this big grand development. So we have some families that along the way that helped set the course that we ended up getting a very nice product in the end, and a historic one at
Wow.
that.
There are so many questions from just what you told me right now that I want to ask you. It's like we'd be here for the next 10 hours, and I know we don't have time for that. But real quick, you know that there's a little cemetery like right down the street from me. And it was kind of, one day I was walking and I looked and I went, oh my God, there's a cemetery like right in the adjacent to our development. And one day I like walked in there and it's like historical. Can you give me like a blurb on that cemetery?
So that cemetery is known as the Fairmont Cemetery, and a majority of all of its interments, I guess if that's the correct term, are Azusa pioneers. And it was dedicated on San Felipe Day, which they call that San Felipe Hill. It's actually a hillside. What's very interesting is that I think the earliest record, if I'm not mistaken, is like 1871 or something like that of the recorded burials in there. But they say that there's a lot that didn't really get to the books because I don't think there's anything that's official. It was in the city of Azusa's territory. And the Monrovia Nursery graciously took care of it. I know that there's a group of trustees that are given lifetime appointments that take care of it. But at one time, the boundaries got redone, and when they were done, it got annexed into the city of Glendora. So it is now technically in the city of Glendora's
Oh, I didn't know that.
jurisdiction. Yeah, it's no longer the city of Azusa's. What's very interesting about it was, I'll never forget, back in, it was around 1992, when they were just beginning to talk about leaving the site, the Monrovia Nursery, and develop it. We had went on a tour up there with some consultants. And I remember it started to rain in the middle. It was a very overcast day. And we were standing out there. And my great uncle and aunt used to work for the Vosbergs and the McNeils and the Slossons. And I remember them hearing stories about seashells coming out of the ground. And no
What?
one knew yeah, seashells. It was very, very interesting. And so when I was standing there, lo and behold, it started to pour harder and the water started to come down like a little creek. And a perfect size sand dollar came right across my shoe. I just remember that clearly. And I picked it up. I still have it to this day. And we were just astonished. So fast forward almost 20 years, and they're doing the development or all of the research for the Rosedale project, and finding that fossil, that there was a fossil found up there that is now known as the Rosedale fossil. In all the research, the reason why that hill exists is, from what I understand, was an old ice glacier from the prehistoric times. And that's why
What?
when it rains very hard, the seashells come out, because it's all the dead fossils of the ground. So over the time that I worked there, and talking to a lot of the craftsmen that worked for Monrovia Nursery, they would tell us about things that would come out in little pieces of starfish or whatever, these little sand creatures, and they would bring them every so often. It just was very interesting and cool to see that prehistoric piece of history. But yeah,
Oh
that's a
my gosh.
very interesting cemetery. I know that the Knott's Berry Farm family have some descendants there. And actually in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken, the Knotts were the ones who actually paid for the first permanent fence that went up there. And that's kind of what they used as the boundaries for what they think it begins and ends. But in respect to the cemetery, since there is no official documents to the burials or the actual locations, I know that from that fence, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was 100 feet outwards. They were not going to build or develop or anything, just in case there was somebody that was not accounted for. But yeah,
That is so
I
interesting.
really, yeah, and I really encourage you to go up there. The tombstones are gorgeous. I mean, it's a very
I actually have pictures when I first moved here. I've lived in Rosedale since about 2013, I believe. And that was one of the most intriguing things that I found was that cemetery. And I took pictures. So maybe I'll link my pictures to this show.
there you
So
go.
anyone who, wants to look at
Of
some
interest.
historical,
Yeah.
it was just amazing to look at this. It's like I
It is
have
a
history
very,
right in my backyard. That is amazing.
yes, yeah, it's a very beautiful location, a very special one, and till this day, they still hold Memorial Day services up there, and it's a really neat hidden gem in our historical past that still exists, which is really cool.
And it's great that you have this knowledge that you can pass on to others. And for the younger generations who are coming in and people like me who are new to the city of Azusa who didn't grow up here. I grew up in Hollywood, in LA area, but not too far away.
Not at all.
I've lived in the San Gabriel Valley probably the majority of my life after as an adult. So, and I love the San Gabriel Valley. It's a beautiful place to live, and we have so many different cultures here. And that's the one thing I do love about Azusa is that it's multicultural, multilingual. We have all different languages spoken here. We have all different socioeconomic people here, and just the people you meet are very interesting, and it's a great place to live in, and it's extremely beautiful. I love, love, love where I live. I mean, I have the hills. I'm right underneath the A for Azusa, and I look out over the city, and it's just breathtaking. It's really gorgeous. I was going to ask you, so the book that you have now is about from 1880 to about the 1950s, 60s?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you think there'll ever be a sequel? Is that a project that you would want to take on, or maybe somebody else might take that on to go from like 1960 to present?
I actually still am in contact with the publishers, and we touch base every so often. And so again, like I told them, it's very hard to get a lot of history from not so long ago to present, but little by little been collecting. And so hopefully when things get a little bit more, if we ever do get more time, if anybody ever does on there to do stuff, because like I say, it was very time consuming, but I would love to continue and do a second sequel to it and continue to the present, because we have a lot of history going on right now before us. And that's what's so cool about technology nowadays. I mean, nothing goes without being documented pretty much daily, because it's something being photographed or a screenshot, a selfie, whatever it is. It's documentation. It is keeping our history alive. And so, yeah, hopefully so. Maybe within the next few years, you'll see something coming up. But as of right now, yeah, still just trying to gather the history for that so not too long ago history.
Right, right. Now, somebody who may be new to the city of Azusa, what interesting facts are there in the city of Azusa? Maybe like some hidden gems that, unless you grew up here, you wouldn't know about.
Let's see. There, it's very strange, because when I think of stuff like growing up here, and I know there's those sites that if you lived in Azusa, or how it is that those little things that do. Because I know when I think of stuff growing up, it's like the dip on Sierra Madre. There was it was
The
part
dip
of
on Sierra Madre.
So Sierra Madre Avenue, when you used to go straight through, there was a natural dip in it because of a creek that went through, and the formation of the road still kept it. So as a reward for young children or adults either, when you would ride on it, if you went pretty fast, it would just like a roller coaster ride. And it was the most
Oh,
coolest thing. It was probably one of the most dangerous things,
oh.
but it survived for generations. And for anybody who grew up here, they remember the dip on Sierra Madre. But that was one of the things that was lost to the development. But there's a lot of, I mean, I really can't pinpoint anything offhand, but
Well,
I
let me
just know that
ask you this. I've never been up there. And unfortunately, we've had so many fires in the last few months, but um, I know I've heard people talk about going up, I guess, Highway 39
yes, uh-huh.
up in the mountains. Like there's
The
supposedly
canyon.
something up there.
Um, the canyon holds a lot of history, a lot of secrets, and just a lot of getaways, excuse me. Um, so I know we have like the Bridge to Nowhere that's up there. Then of course there was the old El Encanto. There's quite a few tunnels that are up there due to the old mining that was done way, way back. Um, and it's just a lot of recreation. I mean, it's just a very beautiful location. But touching back to what you were saying about what makes Azusa so special, one thing I've always been fascinated with is whenever we have consultants that come, and consultants work all over the world with everybody. Um, to me, I'm always curious to what their impression is with Azusa. And the one thing that I always get from them is it's so personal. My gosh, I don't know what it is about the city, but everything's very, very personal. And I just take that as such a compliment. It's not generic. It's not just anywhere. It's very personal. And that's one thing that Azusa has always been so special about is the fact that I don't know what it is about the soil. As soon as you become part of it, you're part of it. And you just stay. And for those who have left, their hearts are always here and they always want to come back home. And just to give you an example, it's very funny and ironic that not even a week ago, I got a call from a woman back in Washington that was born and raised here in 1926. Her grandparents had lived here for many years. She hasn't been back here since the 40s. And
Wow.
she was just getting very, very homesick. And she just called City Hall and said, I just have some questions in regards to certain things that used to be there. I know this is kind of a strange call. So, of course, they transferred her to me. So we were talking, and I was just so intrigued by how much her heart was still here. And we were just talking about the little thing. I thought, you know what, I'm going to send you something in the mail, and I'll talk to you when we talk. And so she got the book, and it was the funniest thing because when she called, she said, I need a ticket back home. I need a ticket back home. She
Oh.
goes, she goes, I've been crying going through this book of all these places I remember. And I just thought, this is so amazing that someone that hasn't been here for almost 80 years. I mean, it's just a very beautiful place. And it's a huge melting pot of everybody, everything. And what I think that's always been unique about it is our location, because we hold a very special location that has always been for, I guess, held, and I mean this in a very respectful way, for a higher ranking financial background. And here it's like, you could be from here to here to anywhere, and you could enjoy it and have all the beauty that anyone else could enjoy. And so it's a very special place, and you don't find too many multi-generational families that stay just because they find it very close to their hearts. And um, I been very fortunate. Both my parents were born and raised here. My four grandparents, both my grandfathers and one grandmother, were born here in Azusa. The only one that wasn't was born right behind her grandfather's the church that he built in Urundale, and then came right back that day. So it's just funny that um, just that's a typical story here. A lot of families have lived for a long time, and I remember as a kid, a few individuals that would say, "Well, I know we don't get as much because we haven't had a belt of generations here of staying." And I thought, well, look, here we are, almost 30 years later. You've got to start from day one and build on that. So it's very special. It's very special, and it warms my heart when you say that you love it, you feel like you're part of it, because that's the way you should feel. And it's changing a lot, and it's funny because when I go in my research in the 20s, you start hearing about this kind of momentum that's building up. And I remember reading an article of a former mayor, Luther Case, in 1923, saying the sleepy giant's been poked and awoken, and he's now on his way to, making Azusa on the map. Sadly, again, the 1929 crash changed that for a lot of us. But then it was very interesting to me, and that fast forward to the year 2016, and it's the grand dedication of the opening for the gold mine. And our city manager at the time, Troy Busloff, had stated almost the exact same thing. The sleepy giant has been awoken. And I just thought, that's it. You know, where we kind of take a little nap and wake up. But it's a neat time to live here. A lot of change. And for any of the old time Azusa residents, or long time, excuse me, I know it could be rattling for a while, but we get used to it. And a lot of it's done very responsibly. And I hope that we continue to go in this course, because the one thing my grandfather used to always emphasize to me, you know, one doesn't know where one's going if he doesn't know from where he's came. And if we don't preserve our history, then we don't really know where we came from. And it's very interesting because I look at our facilities, our public facilities, as far as like our city hall, our women's club building, our Wells Fargo Bank. There's so many structures that stick out. Our White's Funeral Home. These are old structures that show a little past of, you know, what we are, where we are going. And it's important. It's important to preserve our history, and we learn our lessons from them, and try not to dwell on them and say, you know, let's not repeat that. Let's make it better. And we got to leave our mark somehow. We got to leave our mark, and it is important for that. And I think everybody should always know you're all part of the fabric, and the fabric, it has to be very strong in order to be a strong community. And yeah, I've said this before, and I always emphasize the fact that it's very special when you have, you know, your electeds that are born, raised, and have lived their entire lives in the city. They're very vested, and their intentions are for the betterment of this community and its residents. So, like I say, my role here as city clerk, I take very seriously. I'm very, very blessed. And as far as being the president for the Historical Society, and as they, you know, some always say the official, unofficial historian, it's a very blessed position to have, and I take it very seriously. And I hope to God that the future generations see the importance in history. You know, these buildings don't last and stand on their own. Someone has to protect them. Someone has to speak on their behalf, and someone has to remind them, hey, you know, there's a reason why that stood here for so long, not just because it was old and built well. And we got to do that. We got to work together and know that none of us own history. We're just the caretakers of it till the next guy gets it to pass it on.
Well, that's beautiful information. And thank you so much. I know your time is valuable, and this was just really enchanting to learn about the history of Azusa. And I know there's like so much more. I hope people who have not read your book or seen the beautiful pictures in the book, you know, get a chance to get it and learn about the history of Azusa. And it's great when you can learn about the history of a city that you live in, and it is a beautiful city with so much to offer. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time. For our viewers, please like and subscribe to this episode. And until our next episode, you know, I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lita. I appreciate it. And I want to thank you too for being part of our city system as a commissioner. That is a big commitment. And I can tell you, it's all our town. We all got to do our part. And welcome, thank you. And I look forward to working for you in the future. So you have a wonderful evening. God bless, safe, and till our paths cross again. Take care.
Thank you. Take
care. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you.